Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Yud Dalid Amud Aleph. 6 lines from the bottom. Our Mishnah taught us that when a person wants to then fold clothing on Shabbos, he may do so for Shabbos. If he wants to make his bed, he may do so for Shabbos. However, he may not do so on Shabbos for Motzoi Shabbos because that would be a bizoyon to Shabbos. Rabbi Yishmael included not only if Erev Shabbos is a regular Erev Shabbos, even if it was Yom HaKippurim, one may fold his clothing and make his bed on that Erev Shabbos, Yom HaKippurim, for Shabbos. Why? He says because the Kedusha of Shabbos is greater than the Kedusha even of that of Yom HaKippurim. And therefore Yom HaKippurim has the status of Chol Klape, the Kedusha of Shabbos. And therefore he says, if you have Chelvei Shabbos, the fats of Shabbos that need to be burnt, you can put those Chelvei Shabbos on the Mizbech Motzei Shabbos, even if Moshe Shabbos is Yom HaKippurim. And conversely, if your Erev Shabbos was Yom HaKippurim, you could not put the Chelvei Yom HaKippurim on the Mizbech on Leil Shabbos. The Gemara now brings the following Brisa, Tanu Rabbanon, Oilas Shabbos b'Shabbotoi. The Brisa brings the pasuk of Oila Shabbos. There's an Oila every Shabbos, b'Shabbotoi, on its Shabbos. The Brisa understands that this pasuk is an extra superfluous, seemingly, pasuk, whereby it makes the following drasha to explain. Li made al chelvei Shabbos shekrevim v'yom HaKippurim. The fact that it says Oila Shabbos b'Shabbos implies that there's an Oila of Shabbos that can be brought even on a similar type of Shabbos, whereby the Tana says you can take the Chelvei Shabbos and Makriv, they can put them on the Mizbeach even on Motzei Shabbos that is going to be Yom HaKippurim. Yochel, I might think, Af Yom HaKippurim b'Shabbos, even if Yom HaKippurim would be on Erev Shabbos, I can take the Chelvei Yom HaKippurim and put those Chalovim on the Mizbeach on Leil Shabbos. Talmuloymar b'Shabbotoi. Therefore, it says b'Shabbotoi, an exclusion, that only that which has the same status as that Shabbos, but that which is lesser degree of Kedusha than Shabbos, namely Yom HaKippurim, that could not then be brought the Chelvei Yom HaKippurim on Leil Shabbos. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Akiva also learns an inclusion and exclusion, but differently. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Oila Shabbos b'Shabbotoi limed al Chelvei Shabbos shekreim b'Yom Tif. He learns, Rabbi Akiva, that you can take the craving of Shabbos and put them on the Mizbech on Motzoi Shabbos, even when Moshe Shabbos is Yom Tif. Yochalam, I think, Af b'Yom HaKippurim, even if Motzei Shabbos would be Yom Kippur, says Rabbi Akiva, Tamulam v'Shabbatoi. Therefore it says, on its Shabbos, excluding that which is Yom HaKippurim but Motzei Shabbos. The Gemara now says, if you'll analyze this, you can explain it the following way. Shetim tzoloymar. L'divrei Rabbi Yishmael nidorim v'nidavois craving b'Yom Tif. Rabbi Yishmael holds, as you find somewhere else, in Maseches Beit, so that you can go ahead and bring the korban nidavim nidavos even on Yom Tif. Although they can be then brought and you can wait to bring them till after Yom Tif, he says you can bring them on Yom Tif itself. And therefore I need a pasuk to teach me that you can bring the craving, in this case the Chelvei Shabbos on Yom HaKippurim. The Div Rabbi Akiva Nidorim and Nidavos ain't craving beyond it. Whereas Rabbi Akiva, who says they cannot bring Nidorim and Nidavos on Yom Tif, therefore I need the pasuk to teach me that you can take the Chelvei Shabbos and you can bring them on the Mizbeach Motzei Shabbos that will be Yom Tif. Says the Gemara, Vayter Amar Rabbi Zera, we're on the top of Kuf Yud Dalam and Beis, Ki havina beBavel, when I was in Bavel, Have Amre, they would say the following statement. They taught the following: Hodetanya Yom HaKippurim shechal liyois Erev Shabbos, lo hayu toikin. When Yom HaKippurim would be on Erev Shabbos, they would not blow the shofar. Uv Motzei Shabbos lo hayu mavdilin, and on Motzei Shabbos they would not make havdalah. In other words, we learned once before in Daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis that they would blow the shofar on Erev Shabbos, 3 blasts to indicate to be stop and desist from doing malacha, another 3 blasts also to indicate the difference between the Kedusha of Shabbos and the Chol on Erev Shabbos. And it says over here that when Rav Zeir was in Bavel, he said that they taught that when Yom Kippur was on Erev Shabbos, they would not blow the shofar, and on Motzei Shabbos, if Yom Kippur fell out on Motzei Shabbos, they would not make Havdalah, and they said it was Divrei HaKol, this was including everybody. Nobody argues about this. In other words, this is true both according to Rabbi Akiva as well as Rabbi Shmuel. Ki salikna lahason, when I got up to there, referring to I got up to Eretz Yisrael, I went up to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkachise le Yehuda bereid Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. I found the sage Yehuda bereid Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, the Yossi v'Kama Rabbi Akiva that sat and he said that this statement was authored by Rabbi Akiva specifically. The Rabbi Shmuel, kivan the Omar Chel ve'Shabbos craving b'Yom Kippurim, liska ki heichi lahavi yodid dechal ve'Shabbos craving b'Yom HaKippurim. Then, if it was indeed Rabbi Shmuel, then he said that the Chelvei Shabbos can be brought on the Mizbech on Motzei Shabbos, even if that's Yom HaKippurim. And therefore, he would say to blow the shofar, even on Erev Shabbos, which is Yom HaKippurim, although it's not going to be relevant for that year, but they'll understand that there's a distinction between Yom HaKippurim and the Shabbos, and therefore they'll know also that when Yom HaKippurim comes out to be Motzei Shabbos, even on the subsequent year, they'll know that indeed one can then take the Chelvei Shabbos and put them on the Mizbeach on Motzei Shabbos. Ve'amin alei, and I said to him, Ana, this is Rabbi Zera speaking, Kohanim Zerizin, the Kohanim are Zerizin, and therefore the Kohanim do not need a way of reminding them. They don't need the blast of the shofar. And therefore it could indeed be very well Rabbi Yishmael who made the statement above, just like they taught in Bavel, that the statement was according to everybody. That means to say that on Erev Shabbos, where Yom Kippurim fell out, they didn't blow the shofar. And on Motzei Shabbos, they didn't make Havdalah because the Kohen did not need those blasts of the shofar. Omar lei mar kashish bered Rav Chisda Rav Ashi. Mi aminan kohanim is reason hein. He challenges and says, who said that the kohanim are zrin that they don't need the blast of the shofar as a reminder? Vehatnan states sholosh lahavdil sa'am imalocha, sholosh lahavdil ben kodesh lachol. In regards to the shofar blast, it says that there were 6 shofar blasts, and it says there was in the mikdash 24 blasts. It says 3 of them were to then make people desist from doing malacha, and 3 were also making a distinction between the kedusha of Shabbos and Chol. Answers the Gemara Kedamar Abaye Lishar Amud Yomi Abaye, he was talking about where Hinli al Mahamalka, she donated a nivreshes, a chandelier to the Beis HaMikdash. And it says that the chandelier in the morning had the sun shine on it, and as the sun shone on the chandelier, it indicated for everybody there was time for the Kriya Shema to be said. But it says that the Kohanim, they said Kriya Shema much earlier at the time of Alos HaShachar. So how could it be that the chandelier was a reminder if the Kohanim indeed said the Kriya Shema earlier? It can't be a reminder for them. To which Abaye said, you're right, it wasn't a reminder for them, it was a reminder for everybody else to say Kriya Shema. And therefore Abaye said, Lishar Amma di B'Shalayim. So Hachanami over here as well in regard to the shofar blasts, Lishar Amma di B'Shalayim, it was for the other people in Yerushalayim, not for the Kohanim. And there, indeed, we can say the Kohanim were Zrizin Hain. They don't need the reminder of the shofar blasts. And therefore we can indicate what we said before, that both the Chachamim, Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, can both say what they said above, how they learned it in Bavel, that there was not a shofar that blasted on Erev Shabbos when it was Yom HaKippurim, and there was no Havdalah being made on Motzei Shabbos, even when Yom HaKippurim fell on Motzei Shabbos. Ask the Gemara, but still, Veliska ki hechi deliyode deshori b'knivas yerek min amincho lamala. They were matir on Yom HaKippurim to cut the yerek, to cut out stalks that are inedible, to do that even on Yom HaKippurim from the time of Mincha and afterwards. In other words, even though one cannot prepare from Yom HaKippurim to Motzei Yom HaKippurim, just like one cannot prepare from Shabbos to Motzei Shabbos, because it would be a bizayon to the Kedusha of Yom HaKippurim and of Shabbos. But they were mekil, the Chazal were mekil in regards to preparing food for Motzei Yom HaKippurim, because they said if a person is going to prepare food for Motzei Yom HaKippurim, after the time of Mincha, and he's not able to eat it, it's going to then only add to his Agmas Nefesh, to his Inui, to his in a state of suffering, since he cannot eat what he's preparing. So they allowed a person to do that on Yom HaKippurim. So the Gemara is asking over here, why don't they blow the shofar on Erev Shabbos when it's Yom HaKippurim? And then they'll go ahead and indicate that Yom HaKippurim is different than Shabbos. So that even on a different year, when Yom HaKippurim would come out to be on Motzoi Shabbos, so therefore, when they would blow the shofar on Erev Yom HaKippurim, they would know that on the subsequent year, that on Yom HaKippurim, one could go ahead on Mincha Ulamala and do Knivas Hayerek. Answers the Gemara, Omar Rav Yosef, Lefisha Ein Doichin Shvus Lahatir. Because we do not blow the shofar, which is a shvus, to make a heter, to then allow to blow the shofar in order to then indicate that you can go ahead and do the heter of Knivas Yerek. In other words, when do we go ahead and say that you can go ahead and blow the shofar and do a shvus? That's if, let's say, on Erev Shabbos were to be Yontif. And since on Yontif you can then go ahead and do certain things for Oichel Nefesh, like cooking, so then we would blow the shofar to then be Oiser, to indicate that it's us to then do that on Shabbos. But to be Matir, that we don't do. That's the opinion of Rav Yosef. Rav Shisha Berei de Rav Idi Omar, Shvus Kroiva Hitiru, Shvus Rechoika Lo Hitiru. When would they go ahead and blow the shofar? For a Shvus Kroiva, when it was going to then be something for right away. But for a Shvus Rechoika, for a subsequent year that Yom HaKippur would come out to be on Motzei Shabbos, they wouldn't blow the shofar on Erev Shabbos that was Yom HaKippur for a subsequent year. That's a Shvus Rechoika. Ask the Gemara, Shvus Kroiva Hitiru, but would they also then matir a Shvus Kroiva? Vehatnan, it says in the Mishnah, Yom Tiv Shechal Liyos Erev Shabbos, Toikin V'loi Mavdilin. Motzoi Shabbos Mavdilin V'loi Toikin. If Yom Tiv comes out to be on Erev Shabbos, they would then be Tokeya, but on Motzoi Shabbos they would not be Tokeya. Why not? V'amai Liska Ki Hech Delid'ei the Shoy B'Shchita La'alter. They should be Tokeya on Motzei Shabbos for Yontif, to know that you can go ahead and be shoichet an animal on Yontif for the Yontif purposes of eating. Ella mechavarta k'der Rav Yosef. Rather, you have to say it's clear, like the first opinion of Rav Yosef, that makes the distinction between making a shvus, blowing the shofar for an iser purpose, not for a heter purpose. Says the Gemara weiter on the subject of knivas hayerek. Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Lo, Amar Rav Abba, Amar Rav Huna. Yom HaKippurim shechalios b'Shabbos, also b'knivas yerek. Rav Huna says over here that if Yom HaKippurim came out to be on Shabbos, you cannot do knivas hayerek. Omar Rav Mona, Tana, we have the following brisa that is like this teaching, that you cannot do knivas hayerek when it comes out to be Yom HaKippurim on Shabbos. Minayin li Yom HaKippurim shechalios b'Shabbos. When do we know that Yom HaKippurim that's chal on Shabbos is also b'knivas yerek? Talmud loimer Shabboson. That's why the pasuk says Shabboson. Shavois, you shall desist. Lemai, asked the brisa. If you're talking about for malacha, because we're talking about a yerek that is still attached to the ground, and therefore by detaching you'll be over a malacha of kitzira. V'haksiv, behold, it says lo sa'aseh kol malacha. We know that you can't do a malacha diaraisa. That's clear. Elo lav aknivas yerek. Rather, aren't we talking about where it was already detached from the ground? And we're talking about knivas hayerek. Shema mina, indeed, it's still telling me that shvois, you cannot do that on Shabbos. Om Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Om Rabbi Yochanan, Yom HaKippurim shechal liyos b'Shabbos, muter b'knivas yerek. Rabbi Yochanan says that if Yom HaKippurim comes out to be on Shabbos, you can, yes, do knivas hayerek. Meisvei asked the Gemara from the following brisa, Minayin li Yom HaKippurim shechal liyos b'Shabbos, she'asur b'knivas yerek. It brings the same brisa that we just brought before, and says that where do we know that it's asur to do knivas hayerek on Shabbos when Yom HaKippurim falls out on Shabbos? Talmud loimer Shabboson shvois, you shall desist. Lemai, what are we talking about? If you're saying that it's still attached to the ground, v'haksiv lo sa'aseh kol malacha, we already know it says you cannot do malacha, and therefore malacha deraisa of detaching from the ground would be ktsira. Elah b'knivas yerek, is it not what we're talking about? Knivas yerek, and therefore we have a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. who says it is mutter to do knivas hayerek on Yom Kippur that falls on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, we're talking about malacha, it's attached to the ground. We know it says that you cannot detach from the ground. To teach me that if a person does that on Yom Kippur on Shabbos, he will be chayiv both an asay and a los asay. Tanya Kavasi Rabbi Yochanan, we have a brisa that supports the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan that one can do knivas hayerek when Yom Kippur falls out to be on Shabbos. Yom Kippur shechal yos b'Shabbos muter b'knivas hayerek. We're on top of Kutev Tes Vav Amud Aleph, and it goes on to say, and similarly mefatzin be'egoizin, one can open up nuts again on Yom Kippurim in order to then prepare for Motzei Yom Kippurim. Umefarchesim b'rimoinim, and he can open up pomegranates mina mincha lamala from the time of mincha and afterwards. Mimnei agmas nefesh, because of agmas nefesh, as we described before, the Chachamim said, since that a person who is fasting from the time of mincha and lamala, it becomes even more difficult to fast, whereby if he's involving himself with food, it's a greater degree of inui for him. It's agmas nefesh, so they were mekil. They could prepare these foods for Motzei Yom Kippurim. The Gemara then tells over the Bei Rabbi Yehuda Mekanve Karva. That says the house of Rav Yehuda, they would cut cabbages for Motzei Yom Kippurim. The Bei Rabba Galde Kare. The house of Rabbah, they would cut pumpkins. Kivan de Chazed Dahavu Komacharfe. Since I'm assuming it's Rabbah who saw that his household was doing so earlier than Mincha. Omar Luhu, he said to them, Osa igarta b'ma'arova mishnei Rabbi Yochanan da Asir. I received a letter that came from Rabbi Yochanan from Eretz Yisrael, that Rabbi Yochanan wrote that it's also to do knivas hayerek. He said that in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, even though he didn't really receive a letter in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, but in order to then tell his household to desist from doing knivas hayerek. And since they would not have listened to him perhaps, therefore he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Hadron aloch ve'elu kisharim.